Good afternoon, everybody. Just a reminder to sit yourself someplace we can see each other easily and comfortably. At which point Secho leaves the Zendo. I'm not sure what you're doing, Secho. So-on's got it. I think so. I mean, he's got the controller. Let's restart. I think in a very real way, there's nothing that can be said. We all encounter peak moments in life to which words simply don't apply, or shadow and echo at best. But it's not just the most exquisite and terrible moments that are so. In fact, trying to language the most ordinary of moments, if you really pay attention, is still a shadow, a pale echo, some false version, some better than others, but always a little bit not quite it, huh? And the mind that is entranced with its own narrations never feels that, never sees that. The story, the words, the narration is more solid than the ground on which you sit. It's more real to you than the fact of your heart beating and your lungs breathing, these machinations of mind. And the thing that's particularly insidious about it is we don't even perceive that that's what's happening. No idea at all that we're locked in this kind of strange language game, this strange prison of thought. And so I understand why the Buddha, when he came to realization, had an impulse, as it's told, that there's no way to teach this. I mean, as soon as you open your mouth, there you are again, spinning words and stories. Of what use can they be? But, you know, thank goodness he, with a little prodding from the Almighty, the Brahman, the king of all the gods, came down on bended knee and said, dude, please, you know. And by the way, that's something that needs to happen in any world system where a Buddha appears. They have to be asked to teach. They won't just start. But once that happened, once the request was made, now what are you going to do? I mean, he could have just walked around and smacked people. He could have just gone off and lived as a hermit. He could have done all manner of things. But in the end, words, thoughts, used in such a way that they point us to experience. And this is very counter-human in some ways, because most religious and philosophical traditions kind of like bank on their ideas about things and how sweet they are, you know. This really amazing, esoteric, interesting, or whatever, pick your story. But the deal is, buy the story. buy the package and all will be well. Take it home, unpack it, live in it, die in it, and you're guaranteed X, Y, and Z. But for the Buddha, this is not sufficient. For us, it's not sufficient. If you have the causes and conditions ripe enough that you're hearing these words, that you're in this zendo right now, then that option is passed long ago for you. It will no longer serve, and thank goodness. But what to do? Here, many people fall into a very, very bleak pit where everything just means nothing and who gives a shit. But that's just another story. That's just another set of meanings that suggests a kind of comfort which it cannot deliver, just like all the other ones. You can't outthink it. But you can learn to think. You can practice awakened mind. You can realize Buddha mind. And you can live from that. You can cry from that. You can laugh from that. You can live from that. And dear one, you can die from that and trust it all the way. And yes, you can think. And language is fine once you're awake, once you're free. Then you can see what is wholesome and what is unwholesome clearly. Think of the suffering that comes because we cannot recognize the unwholesome as in fact being unwholesome. We take a poison to be nutrition, we ingest it, we ache, but we don't trust our body's response because after all, the label says, the culture says, my priest said, the Holy Writ says, my mom said. Maybe well-intended all, but trust your body. How about that? This particular text, for whatever reason, has been really calling my name. And it's funny because I have not really hung out with this text since I was in my 20s. But reading it now, again, I can see why it was so important to me in that critical age. And I'm so grateful that I came into contact with this text. It's called the Dhammapada, which is the sayings of Buddha. It's one of the many collections in the Theravadan tradition, Pali Canon. The opening few paragraphs. Choices. We are what we think. All that we are arises with our thoughts. With our thoughts, we make our world. Speak or act with an impure mind, and trouble will follow you, as the wheel follows the ox that draws the cart. We are what we think. All that we are arises with our thoughts. With our thoughts, we make the world. Speak or act with a pure mind, and happiness will follow you as your shadow, unshakable. I think perhaps if we got nothing but that, we'd be a long distance down the path. But it hinges on understanding this one, as we have it translated here, this one word, pure. Oh, is there a loaded word? Pure. Oh my gosh. Did the Puritans have it right after all? How do we know what pure is? What does pure even mean? Is it obeying Buddha's will or something? What the heck is pure? What is impure? How do we know? This is a serious question, actually. Centuries later, Master Dogen would comment saying that the way is basically perfect and all-pervading. How could it be contingent on practicing anything? How could it be contingent on realizing anything? The Dharma vehicle is free and untrammeled. What need is there for concentrated effort? Indeed, the whole body is far beyond the world's dust. Who could believe in a means to brush it clean? It is never apart from one, right where one is. What is the use of going here and there to practice? Importantly, he continues, and yet, if there is the slightest discrepancy, the way is as distant as heaven is from earth. If the least like or dislike arises, you are lost in confusion. Very strange. Inherent perfection, it's all here, it's all done. Why would you need to go anywhere and practice anything? And yet, you can miss that fact. So when we gather, we don't have a bunch of little desks. And we don't study and ponder the meanings and write commentaries and read them. Hopefully you're not doing that. Maybe some of you are sitting there looking like a Buddha, but actually parsing the scriptures. I used to do that. I really did. I used to sit there and compare Dogen with Aquinas and all kinds of dumb shit. That's what I needed to do for a while. Thank God I found my way out. That's a hell of a trap, I'll tell you. You have this incredible opportunity being here in this space, in this container. Respect that fact. There are many people who long to be in this room right now and cannot, for many reasons. You're here. Respect that fact. No matter what else is going on, how terrifying or how glorious, just for the moment, set it down. Dear one, your life is always glorious and terrifying. Have you not noticed that yet? It's just another day in the shop. Yes, there are peaks. Yes, there are valleys. But this, the ocean is but waves. Oh my God, a wave. Yeah, a wave. What is it that's waving? What is the ocean itself? And how do I get past thinking about it and pondering it and accepting, but not just like saying, oh, I guess I'm it and just there's nothing to do. That doesn't reach it either. It's quite a pickle, isn't it? In this Dhammapada text a little later on, the Buddha writes this, talking about mind. As the fletcher whittles and makes straight their arrows, so the master directs their straying thoughts. As the fletcher whittles and makes straight their arrows, so the master directs their straying thoughts. Like a fish out of water, stranded on the shore, thoughts thrash and quiver. For how can they shake off desire? In fact, desire is the nature of thought. I want, I want, I want. It's a hell of an image, isn't it? Fish flopping around on. Did you watch your mind at all during the session? It doesn't have to stay like that. It really doesn't. Thoughts are what they are, but the way that you relate to them can radically transform. These thoughts tremble, they are unsteady, and they wander about at their own will. But it is good to control them, and to master them brings happiness. I would say it is good to control how you relate to them. To be the master brings happiness. Thoughts will be thoughts, but what about you? But how subtle these thoughts are, how elusive. The task is to quiet them, and in this way to find happiness. The text says to quiet them and to rule them, but again, I make a little chiropractic adjustment to our translator. Right. Good luck trying to control your thoughts. If I ask you to think of a musician, you have no way of controlling what musician occurs to you. And you don't need to. It's fine. Maybe you're not lucky enough to have Louis Armstrong come right to mind. I still love you. But you do have to master how you relate with these thoughts and who's actually driving the car. That is your business. That's Buddhist business. That's the business of awakening. With single-mindedness, the master quells their thoughts. Ends their wandering. Seated in the cave of the heart, the awakened one finds freedom. What is this seated in the cave of the heart? What is this freedom that the Buddha is pointing to? How do we make it real? You know, the practices that are taught here are, for the most part, quite straightforward. Quite simple. Put your body like so, concentrate in your belly like so, find your one point. It's a little exotic at first, but really, just give it a minute, you get it. Keep your spine like so, keep your hands like so. You can imagine if you were lost, about to die of starvation and dehydration, and someone came and gave you a map. This way. If you follow this map, you'll make it. And you open the map and it seems too stupid. It seems too simple, like that can't help. It's got to be more complicated than that. And so you leave the map aside and go off wandering on more exotic routines until you die. When actually just go to the brook and drink. So the sitting practices of Zen are, for the most part, quite simple. But it doesn't mean that they're easy. To really just sit, you know? Dogen says, think non-thinking. It's more actually thinking, mu thinking, like Buddha Dharma. What is mu thinking? How do we see it? The text continues, how can a troubled mind ever understand the way? If a person is disturbed, they will never be filled with awakening. The first step in training is equanimity. You must give yourself the gift of finding equanimity anyway. Not waiting until life is all lined up the right way and then allow yourself to finally discover it. It will never happen. And if it does, it'll only be like for a minute. You know, the circumstances will line up once in a while, like in spots, like for a time. But it's not reliable. It's quite possible to be in a lot of trouble and not be troubled and deal with it. I'm not talking about I don't care. That doesn't cut it. It matters. But the way of engaging it depends on you being free from the beginning, like right now. In that cave of the heart, that temple that's always with you. From that place, now respond. Because the thing is, you can like do really good. You can like do all the right things in the right order, and things can even work out pretty well. But still, the thoughts are not really tamed. And they still thrush about like that fish on the shore, gasping for air. And still, even though maybe everything by any external measure is just fine, you're not. Because samsara, baby. Right? And of course, almost nobody I know lives in that setting. There's always something wrong. at least something, usually more. I mean, you know, read the news, talk to your friends, look in the mirror. And so we come to retreat. We come together and we gather, and all of us submit to the wisdom of the schedule and this generous gift that the lineage has passed down through many, many lives, many, many, many practitioners, many, many people who ache and suffer and grieve and celebrate and laugh and birth. All of it. It really comes down to right here, right now. You. The whole thing is for you. This temple floor is for you. The Buddha here is for you. This irritating wire is also for you. This coffee is for me, but the energy it gives me is for you. There are some limits, damn it. But there is coffee for you too, if you want. But what will you do? Will you take this beautiful map and say, meh? Or worse, will you take this beautiful map and keep thinking about it the whole time instead of actually just doing it? And not realize the difference. A mind of equanimity, no longer seeking to consider what is right and wrong, beyond judgment, watches and understands, sees clearly. This is live words. See clearly. Be clear. Be very clear. Let the movements of your body be clear. The way you move into space, let it be clear, let it be simple, let it be direct, but above all, let it be clear. And when something goes some unexpected way, no kidding, just be clear about it. No problem. Don't sleepwalk. Don't gut it out. Don't hide. Show up. Really show up. And I mean show up when that bell rings. When that bell rings and you're at your station, you know, I mean, I can remember times when I'd be at retreat and I'd feel like, oh, thank God the bell rung. Now I can just, no one's going to pester me or bother me, or there's nothing to worry about. I already got crushed in Doksan. I don't have to worry about that for another day or so. I can just sit here and zone out, you know? Big mistake. I don't know how many days of session I wasted like that. Learn from my example. Don't waste this time. That exactly those moments when you think it doesn't matter, it really matters. Because that's you. No one but you is the master of your experience. It doesn't depend because Roshi's looking at you and going to give you a pat on the head or a smack on the ass. It's not about that. Know that the body is a fragile jar, and make a castle of your mind. I might say, know that the body is impermanent. Trust your awakening. Soon the body is discarded. Then what of it? A useless log of wood, it lies on the ground. Then what? And these closing words, you know what, for some reason these tattooed themselves on my heart decades ago, and I'm so grateful. Maybe they'll speak to you, I don't know. Your worst enemy cannot harm you as much as your own thoughts unguarded. But once mastered, no one can help you as much. Not even your father or your mother. So you have everything you need. There's nothing lacking. There's not some other component that needs to be added before you count. It's all done. All you need to do is pay attention and be clear. Be awake. Be attentive to what's happening. And trust yourself. Trust the process. Trust each other. And do not waste the time. Because if you waste time here, you're practicing wasting time. Don't practice that here. Even if you fail 100 times in 10 minutes, that's fine. I don't mind that at all. That's fine. But 101 times, you get back on that horse. Let's make it happen, folks.